talking about when Mydros was rescued by Fingon. Fingon?
Polo.
Hello everyone, welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. This will be the fourth meeting of the Silmarillion crew. I hope you've been enjoying our academic and highly enlightening discussions thus far. Today we will cover chapters 13 to 18 of the Quenta Silmarillion, which is of the return of the Noldor through of the Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of Fingolfin. Today it's going to be recorded in two separate sessions, so this is part one, which will have three fellow vassals with us, and then I'm going to record a second, a part two later on. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, fight over the order. I know we didn't agree ahead of time. Just go for it.
This is Shane, East Texas Direwolf on the forums.
This is Matt Varley on the forums.
This is Brett White Raven on the forums.
And this is Greg Claudius the Fool on the forums. So, right. So we are going to get right down to it. And basically where we left off, Feanor, the Noldor, had just returned to Beleriand. There had already been the first battle of the Wars of Beleriand, where the elves basically fought off the Morgoth's first attack. And Denethor was the first major elf to die over in the east. And now Fingolfin arrives, and basically the wars are getting ready to start in earnest. And I believe Shane is going to recap the first chapter here.
Chapter 13 of the Return of the Noldor. We take it back a little bit. Feanor lands, and he sets fire to the ships, and the fire is seen by Fingolfin, and also by the orcs and watchers of Morgoth. What Morgoth thought about the fire is not known, but it's known he intended to drive the elves back into the sea. Morgoth sent a host to attack Feanor before his camp was set. This was the second battle of the Wars of Beleriand. I don't think I said that
That's
right.
right. Keep Beleriand.
Beleriand, right. Dagor, Nuin, Gileath. Battle under stars. The elves whooped the orcs' ass all over the place. 10 days the battle lasted, and only a few orcs returned to Morgoth. But in the fighting, Feanor was killed. And now I'll do my first reading from the book. I figure Feanor's a big enough character. We should give his death the attention it deserves. For Feanor in his wrath against the enemy would not halt, but pressed on behind the remnants of the orcs, thinking so to come at Morgoth himself, and he laughed aloud as he wielded his sword, rejoicing that he had dared the wrath of the Valar and the evils of the road, that he might see the hour of his vengeance. Nothing did he know of Angband or the great strength of defense that Morgoth had so swiftly prepared, but even had he known, it would not have deterred him, for he was fey, consumed by the fire of his own wrath. Thus it was that he drew far ahead of the van of his host, and seeing this, the servants of Morgoth turned to bay, and there issued from Angband Balrogs to aid them. There upon the confines of Dordadella, the land of Morgoth, Feanor was surrounded, with few friends about him. Long he fought on and undismayed, though he was wrapped in fire and wounded with many wounds. But at the last he was smitten to the ground by Gothmog, lord of Balrogs, whom Ecthelion after slew in Gondolin. There he would have perished, had not his sons in that moment come up with force to his aid, and the Balrogs left him and departed to Angband. Let's see. Feanor's sons then were carrying him back, and he told them to stop, knowing he would die soon. He cursed the name of Morgoth thrice, and told his sons to hold to their oaths of vengeance. Then he died, but he had neither burial nor tomb, for so fiery was his spirit that as it sped his body fell to ash, and was borne away like smoke, and his likeness was never again appeared in Arda. Neither has his spirit left the halls of Mandos. Thus ended the mightiest of the Noldor, of whose deeds came both their greatest renown and their most grievous woe. Now the Noldor met the Grey Elves of Middle-earth, and learned about Thingol, and the Elves of Beleriand thought the Noldor had come to help them against Morgoth and his emissaries of the Valar, which we know better. Morgoth sent word that he acknowledged defeat and offered to meet and discuss terms. Madros, oldest son of Feanor, is that how y'all pronounce that? Madros?
Yeah.
Madros?
It's Mithros.
That's right. DH is a
Maedhros.
TH. Maedhros.
Mithros. They agreed, but both sides betrayed the terms and brought more troops, but Morgoth sent more troops, and Balrogs. All were killed but Mithros, and he was taken to Angband. Morgoth offered to return Mithros to the Noldor if they ceased fighting and left, but the sons of Feanor knew he would not return Mithros if they did, and they could not betray their oaths anyway. So Morgoth hung Mithros by his right hand from a precipice upon Thangorodrim. So Fingolfin finally showed up as the sun came up for the first time. Morgoth's forces retreated from the sun back into Angband. Fingolfin settled his people close to Fëanor's people, and everybody chilled out, but everybody was still
Opposite
pissed.
sides of the lake.
Yeah. Fingon, son of Fingolfin, wanted to heal the feud of the people between Fingol's people and Fëanor's people. Fingon was an old friend of Mathros, and he went to rescue him. He climbed Thangorodrim. Oh, I said that wrong. He climbed Thangorodrim, and when he could not find Mathros, Fingolfin sang a song, and Mathros heard and answered him in song, but he was still too high for Fingon to rescue him. So Mathros asked Fingon to slay him with an arrow and end his torment. Fingon strung an arrow and said a prayer to Manwë. Then Thorondr, king of eagles, appeared and carried Fingon to Mathros. But they still could not break the chain that held him, so Mathros again asked Fingon to slay him. Instead, Fingon cut off his hand, and Thorondr carried them back. Mathros healed, and his sword in his left hand became more deadly than in his right. So the feud was tentatively settled, and Mathros gave kingship of the Noldor to Fingolfin, though not all his brothers agreed with him, but they said nothing. So the Noldor united, laid siege to Angband again, and sent messengers to treat with the people of Beleriand. Now, Thingol, being wise, said, I don't trust these assholes. Talking about the Noldor. He allowed only the princes of Finarfin's house to pass through his magic girdle around his land and treat with them because they were closely kin. Angrod, son of Finarfin, treated with Thingol and told what had happened but left out all the bad parts. Thingol said, all right, y'all can settle here, here, and here, but y'all better check yourself because I'm the big shit around here. The sons of Fëanor said, whatevs.
All right, so let's just have a mini discussion up to this point, and then Shane can continue.
So,
So Fëanor, bad general, huh?
Like, do you think he actually thought he could take more? Like, what was he going to do with a couple of soldiers against Valar and his?
Well,
I know he didn't know, and he's not in his right mind, but he.
Well, it said had he known, he would have done the same thing.
He didn't care.
He thinks he's the shit.
yeah, his oath is driving him.
But even as he's dying, and he knows that they can't, he sees there's that passage about how he sees the peaks, and he knows that victory is impossible. But he still, like, his last act is not to, like, let it go. He just tightens it more and forces his sons to double swear, even though they're already sworn.
If I were one of his sons, I'd be like, Dad, I know you're dying and everything, but that's a dick move, man. I'm not swearing to that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I guess he pretty much knew he was the greatest elf ever, so he figured if anybody could do it, he could. But then Fingolfin later on does the same thing. He challenges Morgoth.
Yeah, but he does that at the point where he thinks this is like the end of days, so I'm going to go out on top. And I have more respect for what Fingolfin did than Fëanor, because, like, he can't have that many people with him. He just got there. They won their battles. They've been fighting for 10 days, and then he's like, I'm going to go march off, and it just doesn't, I don't like it.
And if he had just waited, he would have been all right.
Yeah, but can you imagine, like, having him around for the next 500 years? He would have done this every 10 minutes. Just...
Oh, I didn't mean wait like that. I mean, it wasn't very long before Fingolfin showed up. It wasn't like 500 years.
No, I know, but yeah, it wouldn't have ended well for him, no matter when it happened. But
no, it would. I mean, his death has been, like, foretold from the beginning,
right.
So...
You know, born with the fiery spirit that burned up his mother, and he dies as a fiery spirit, literally, like, turning to ash. And you know, there's always the question of, do elves come back from the halls of Mandos? And it seems like, you know, Tolkien goes out of his way here to mention that his spirit is still there, like, he is not left. And it's been, you know, 10 or 15,000 years, up till the fourth age of this. So he's still hanging out in Mandos, and I can just imagine his spirit, you know, burning a hole in wherever he's hanging out.
Yeah, like Mandos walks down, he's like, Fëanor, do you feel bad for what you've done? He's like, I do it all again. Okay.
Another 10,000 years.
Just walks away.
Yeah, but just like with Nienna, like, you know, he really keeps Mandos' wife in business. Doesn't she weave everything? He just keeps on burning down the tapestries.
Yeah, she's right there, you know, just making more of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, now the elf in the Lord of the Rings is Fingolfin, right?
Glorfindel.
Oh, Glorfindel. Okay, so we haven't seen him yet.
Oh, in Rivendell, the one that helps him on the road.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think
Glorfindel
shows up in the Silmarillion at any point.
Oh,
I thought he was the one that killed Gothmog.
No, that's Ecthelion.
Well, I thought when we talked on Lord of the Rings, I thought one of those elves was supposed to have the same name from the first age, and there was debate about whether that was the same elf.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet. We can tackle that when we get there. But I know that's Ecthelion was like a captain in Gondolin, and he's the one who killed Gothmog right before the city fell.
Okay.
So, Shane, the quote that you put when Fingolfin first arrives is freaking awesome.
I think there was some confusion because it said in one of the previous chapters that Fingolfin arrived with the rising of the moon, or maybe was it Feanor arrived with the rising of the moon, and then Fingolfin gets the sun.
Well, I think he entered like Middle Earth with the rising of the moon, and entered the battle with the first sunrise.
Are you talking about when there's flowers at his feet and everything?
Yeah, it says.
Yeah, I thought about doing that, but I figured this was. I devoted my readings to Feanor.
I gotcha. But I Fingolfin's like my favorite of all the Noldor, and it is a pretty badass entrance. It says, as the host of Fingolfin marched into Mithrim, the sun rose flaming in the west, and Fingolfin unfurled his blue and silver banners, and blew his horns, and flowers sprang beneath his marching feet, and the ages of the stars were ended. So he's got like magical Swamp Thing abilities, right, Shane? He can make plants rise up at his feet.
He's a plant elemental.
Yeah. He's an elemental. That didn't go over as well as I thought it would.
Yeah, I don't know Swamp Thing, so it's all over my head.
I read it and I still don't get Swamp Thing, but that's another discussion.
I'm still editing it.
Yeah, so you get the rescue of Maedhros from.
I thought that was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, Thorondor. This is like the first time Thorondor shows up, and like he's gonna be there for pretty much all the major shit that goes down later on, and he's always there when you need him.
Yeah, what's how big did it say he was? It was like a league. It was like 30 leagues or something. Does anybody know if that's based on like an actual measurement?
How big he is?
Well, from wing to wing tip, it says.
If he's 30 leagues across, that means he's like.
Well, I'm saying that's what I'm saying because the league it can't be what I'm thinking.
No,
of
it was. Yeah, it's probably some other archaic word, but it means feet probably. 30 fathoms.
Is that what it
pretty
says?
darn big.
Well, if you ever see the artwork by Ted Naismith about the Alakabeth or whatever, the Doom, like it's all the clouds are in the form of like a giant eagle's wings.
Yeah, but I never thought that was like an actual eagle. I thought that was just like them, the Valor saying, "Cut the shit, because we're coming for you."
And they did.
Yeah.
They did hard.
Yeah, a fathom is 6 feet, so figure 6, 12, 18, 180 feet across. He's a pretty badass, pretty huge eagle.
Hello?
Oh, hey, Matthieu, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was half an hour late, probably.
Right.
The sons of Feanor said, whatever. Maedhros said, we'll take the lands. We won them anyway. It's all good. But Corinthor was pissed and started talking shit about Angrod, who then got pissed and left. The people were like, here we go again with these assholes. But Maedhros chilled his brothers out, and everybody settled down for a while. At this point, I flipped ahead to see how many more pages I had to summarize.
Yeah. And there's still 5 or 6 to go, right?
Yeah. Now, Corinthor's peeps settled furthest east, and they met the dwarves when they came back out after the fighting. I thought that was interesting that, dwarves, I figured they'd be all about the fighting, but apparently they were, because they had their heads in the dirt. They didn't really like each other. That's the dwarves and Corinthor's people. But they made an alliance, and they both profited greatly. 20 years later, Fingolfin threw a really big feast, and a lot of people came. 30 years after that, Turgon, son of Fingolfin, and Finrod, his friend, decided to go journey about. While sleeping, Olmo sent them both dreams that they should search for secret places of strength to prepare for Morgoth's return. Finrod told Thingol about it, and Thingol told Finrod about the deep gorge of the river Narog. And he sent guides to take him there, and Finrod established Nargothrond. He was aided by the dwarves, who also made for him Noglomir, the necklace that was the most renowned of their works in the elder days. Galadriel, Finrod's sister, stayed in Doriath because Celeborn was there and there was great love between them. She also learned great lore and wisdom from Melian. Turgon did not find the place he dreamed about, but eventually Olmo appeared to him and showed him the secret place to make his city. Turgon returned and made plans in secret to build his city. Morgoth sent his forces out again, thinking the elves were unprepared, but Fingolfin and Maedhros were not unprepared, and they totally destroyed Morgoth's forces. The elves took this as a warning and laid siege to Angband, which lasted for 400 years. But the elves could not besiege Angband from the north, and spies were able to escape and take captives from time to time and make them their thralls and spies. 100 years after that, Morgoth sent orcs out again, and they were defeated again. And Morgoth thought, well, maybe I should try something different. So after another 100 years, he sent out Glaurung, first of the fire drakes of the north. And he came out of Angband and attacked the elves, and was doing pretty good against him, but Fingon rallied the elves, and they drove him back into Angband, being that he was young and only half grown. Another 200 years of peace passed, and the elves prospered. And that's chapter 13.
Since like now the years are basically starting, I try to keep it in my head, how much time is actually passing. So up to this point, I mean, this chapter basically covers from like year 1 through year 450. 260 is where glowering attacks. So we'll say 260.
Yeah.
So you've got basically 200 years of peace. They say the long peace starts at the end of the battle, the third battle, which was the glorious battle, the Dagger Aglareb. And then you had the two not battles that weren't official battles when the orcs attacked 100 years later, and then when Glaurung came out 100 years after that. So I was always kind of confused as, did Glaurung do this on his own? Because it seemed like Morgoth was pissed when he got back. He's like, you shouldn't have done that yet? Or was he pissed at himself that I revealed my super weapon too early?
It's like when the dog runs away. Probably it's like he doesn't want. He tells him like come back here, and he just doesn't listen to him. So it's I don't know. Feels like that.
I think what happened was he sent him out, and then he didn't do what he wanted him to do. Like as far as good as he wanted him to do. He's like, I shouldn't have sent you out. You suck. You're the worst dragon.
He's the only dragon at this point.
Because Morgoth doesn't create things, right?
Well, he can mess he's got mixing stuff together, and I'm sure there was a Drake was maybe a weird regular thing, and he mixed it with his dark arts and something. But yeah, he can't create anything original. Yeah. He always has to mess up stuff, right?
Probably like an eagle, right?
Ooh, could have been an eagle. Yeah.
Well, it couldn't have been an eagle. It didn't have
a fell
wings.
Beast. We know there's fell beast. It was probably
dragon.
some fell beast hybrid of some sort. Science.
I'm not sure that fell beast. Are we sure when the fell beast actually came about?
Well, we know they were before this because that's where the remember the elves before the first battle were running from fell beasts that showed up all of a sudden, and that's where they came to Doriath to get away from them.
No, okay, but even then, the fell beast would still be something that Morgoth created, right? Because they seem like creatures that are totally evil. So I'm not sure.
Just because they're slimy and dragony doesn't mean they're evil. They could just be that, and then they were taken by Morgoth.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Okay.
Right, just like elves became orcs, so it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
He corrupts something good and makes it evil.
Yeah, I just thought maybe he just picked up a lizard someday and you just made it 50 times bigger, and that was yay, I made it.
There we go. That's it. We settled that.
It's a lot of eugenics there. He just keeps breeding the lizards to be bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Hey man, it's hundreds of years. He's got the time.
Yeah,
but it's really I think when you look at what Glaurung is named, Glaurung the Golden, right? It's like Smaug the Golden. The dragons are not very inventive in naming themselves. They're really obvious in what they want.
We don't know if they named themselves or they got their names from somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, they probably just have bad PR people. You never hear of Sammy the Pleasant, the dragon that didn't do anything.
Well, it doesn't really matter what you call yourselves because elves are going to give you a new name anyway because they're assholes like that.
You have 50 names for you already. You got to remember them all because you have to deal with these people at some point.
And speaking of names, we also, I believe the only Balrog to be named in the whole world is Gothmog, correct? We never get a name of another Balrog at any other point. It's just the Balrog that Gandalf fights later on.
Yeah, he gets. He has a problem with copyright for his name because there's a guy in the Return of the King who's named Gothmog as well.
Captains is
right? Yeah, it's I think it's suspected that Gothmog in the Return of the King is a Nazgul, but I'm not
sure. I thought it was just a high orc or something.
Yeah, in the movie they make him an orc, so whatever.
But it's good to get some bad guy names also, and they're much easier to keep straight because there's only two of them.
Yeah.
So Fëanor's still an asshole when he dies, right?
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit. He goes out as he came in, cursing and whining. But I still respect him. I just I get it. But he had a chance there to sort of go the other way, and he didn't take it. But it didn't surprise me.
And no tears were shed that day.
On the Turgon and Finrod dreams thing. These guys both have dreams, crazy dreams from the Lord Ulmo, and neither one of them talk about it. These guys aren't friends. Fuck that. You'd be telling your friend that you're out hanging out with what happened,
but at the same time, you'd be like, I'm the only person who knows this. I'm not telling anyone about this. I'm going to go build my secret city. It's like the whole thing with the shields when they got their swords for the first time. No one told each other that they had swords. They all thought they were the only ones with swords.
Then these guys aren't true friends. Because if you're best buddies with somebody, you're hanging out in the wilderness and you both have strange dreams, you talk about it. That's what you do. You think Turgon doesn't trust Finrod?
I don't think we're supposed to think too deep about it. It's just the dreams and the and the ability the elves have to foresee events in the future. It seems like some of them have it. It's just a thing that exists. It's not a major thing. So maybe they've all just had 2 weird dreams.
Turgon takes the secret thing a lot more serious than Finrod.
Finrod actually starts to build Nargothrond, and then Turgon still has to. He has the idea of the city, he doesn't know where it is, so he's got to find it first.
Almo hasn't showed him where it is yet.
Maedhros gets his hand chopped off, so he's kind of like a little Jaime Lannister thing going on. Except as far as we know, he actually does, retrain himself to fight as deadly with his right hand as his left.
About how Fingin finds Maedhros just like Sam finds Frodo. Yeah, he sings his little song, and then Maedhros answers back, and he's like, "Oh, my friend," and then he almost shoots him with an arrow.
That's one thing it's clouded in my head because they didn't have that in the movie, right? They didn't have them sing.
Right,
so
they didn't have
just
them in
messed
the
it
movie.
up. But yeah, that was a nice little echo there.
But I think it's strange that Finrod is ready to shoot Maedhros with the arrow because he can't get to him, and then he whispers a prayer to Manwë, and then the eagle's just there. So was Manwë already sending that eagle before he prayed, or was it instantaneous when he prayed? The eagle was there.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I cleared that up.
The eagles are always there. There's never been a point where they're like, "Oh, I wish there was an eagle," and they had to wait a chapter. The eagles are always there. So.
That's not true. Fingolfin died, and then the
But he
eagle
didn't
came
ask
and
for
got
an
him.
eagle, or he didn't. He was doing his thing anyway.
I think he would have been all right with an eagle coming down and helping him
He
out.
wouldn't have he would have got
Hey.
murdered. So that's coming up.
Yeah, but if that eagle came down and attacked Morgoth's face, he might have been able to actually do some damage, other than just cutting his foot.
Yeah, but he couldn't. He's a Valar. He couldn't kill him.
I could have done more though. I mean, he tripped over the holes the guy's giant hammer with. I'm getting a little ahead
Save
of
this
myself.
for
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So the other main thing is just that Thingol basically doesn't trust the Noldor.
Fingal doesn't trust anybody though.
He's a good king.
Of all the realms,
Yeah.
I'd like to hang out in Doriath. I think it's got the magic thing going on. It seems like the place to be, even when all the shit goes down.
That, and you don't have to worry about getting waylaid because nobody can come in there, including you, Greg. So you wouldn't even be there. Only one human can get past her.
If I chop my hand off and fall in love with an elf, I'll be let in. Let's see.
Good luck.
Yeah, don't do that, dude.
All right.
Try to fall in
Put
love
the knife
first.
down.
Chop your hand off if it works out.
Chopping hand is always the second option.
All right. Chapter 14 of Beleriand and its realms. Brett?
Yeah, so basically this chapter is just describing where everybody is on the map. They go into rivers and stuff, but I don't give a shit about rivers, so we're not
Okay.
going to talk about them.
Chapter 15.
I just got a thing of where everybody's at. Does it matter?
Go ahead.
Does
I
anybody
mean,
really...
he includes the map in this chapter because it's important, so it does explain,
Which is basically what I did was I copied down the map because...
And it's still not that
Oh,
easy
no, I had to flip
because
back through it 10
everything's got
times.
3 names, and they're named different things at different times.
And Turgon's
That's
in
why
2 places at once.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the map, we have Morgoth top center, far up in the north. You can't even see his holdings from the map because it's not included. All we see is Ardgallen, which is the plains in front of his southern gate. And then to the west of Morgoth is Hithlum, which is where Fingolfin and his son Fingin are. Fingolfin takes the northern part of Mithram, and Fingin takes the southern part of Dorloman. Then between them and the sea, to the west, is Neverrast, which is where Turgon is until he finds Gondolin and moves there.
He's got a perfectly good city in Vinyamar on the water. It's nice, but he's going to leave it. But he's there for
It's real nice. Then south of them is Círdan, and they're just sitting there by the sea. And then just to the west of them is Finrod and Nargothrond. Or east of them is Finrod and Nargothrond. And that's western Beleriand. And then directly south of Angband and Ardgallen, which is where Morgoth is Dorthonion. And it's where Finarfin's other 2 sons, Angrod and Ignor, are. Just watching to make sure nothing comes out there, I guess.
That must be really boring.
Yeah, they just sit there and watch the fields. I don't know. Maybe they like it.
Just to be sure,
So,
just to clarify, Agnor and Angrod are Finarfin's sons, not Fingolfin's.
Oh, Finarfin. Yeah, I got that written here. I'm an asshole. All right.
You know we were going to
So,
get a comment if we didn't clear that.
Yeah. South of them is Doriath, which is where Thingol and Melian are, which everybody knows and loves in Menengroth. So, and then finally to the east, which is as far away from Valinor as they can be, are the sons of Feanor. And they're just strewn about from top to bottom. It's Maedhros, and then goes to Celegorm and Curufin, Amrod and
They're all
Amras.
there. The only thing to make note is that
Yeah,
Carandir is the one who's the farthest east, and that's where the dwarves live too. So he's got the most contact with the dwarves.
And he just cleans up on the dwarven trade routes. He's like, gets all the good
Taxes.
shit.
Oh, he didn't get no Noglamir.
Well, that was commissioned. And that's basically it. They talk about rivers and shit, and mountains.
And also, Syrian is the Anduin of Beleriand, if that makes sense. It's a major river. It divides
Yeah,
right in the middle. There's East and West Beleriand, and Syrian is the dividing point.
It's like the Nile.
And it ends
Yeah.
at the Fallos, which is that's the bay. That's where the Isle of Balor is, and that's basically the island that was used as a ferry, or what's left of the island that was used as a ferry to take the Telerio, to take all the elves over.
Basically, you have Morgoth in the north, and then like a semicircle of mountains where all the elves just sit and wait for him to come out.
It's like natural age already.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah, and Thingol was smart by letting them settle to the north of him where he didn't have control, and they're going to be a buffer between him and Morgoth when he does attack. So he's definitely a shrewd ruler, if a little forceful at times.
He's using elven shields.
Ah, I get it, like human shields.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was like that.
I was like, I hope he's using elven shields. They are elves, right?
All right, so the stage is set for the next battles, and we are moving on to the chapter 15 of the Noldor in Beleriand, which is more of an elucidation on where everybody is, where everybody settles, and there's some action also. So, Matt, you're going to take us through this one?
Yeah, sure. So as mentioned before, Ulmo goes to Turgon and gives him this dream while he's ruling in Nevrast. Ulmo eventually shows him that there's a great hiding space in a mountain vale, and they'll make that he should make his imitation of Tirion upon Tuna, which is located which is the Noldor city in Valinor. So he sends him like the design of the city into his brain through dreams, and then leads him up a river. So basically, he says not to love his works too much because you will be betrayed. But he also says, I'm going to give you a heads up about the upcoming betrayal. Thus it may come to pass that the curse of the Noldor shall find thee too ere then, and the treason awake within thy walls, and they shall be in peril of fire. But if this peril draweth nigh indeed, then even from Nevrast one shall come to warn thee, and from him beyond ruin and fire hope shall be born to elves and men. Leave therefore in this house arms and a sword, that in years to come he may find them, and thus you shall know him, and shall not be deceived. So he basically says that it's a lot of foreshadowing, obviously, because we all know what comes from it. But basically he says that Gondolin will stay strong, but it'll be the last place that they are strong, because remember that the true hope of the Noldor lieth in the west and cometh from the sea. So some fun facts about Gondolin. It took 250 years to complete. It is accessible now only by eagle. It means hidden rock. And basically, like, Turgon takes all his people, Ulmo hides them, and they sneak into this vale, and then, like, no one sees them for 350 years.
It's a blink of an eye. They're used to elves just dropping off the map for a couple centuries.
Right. And then Turgon has a bitty daughter called Idril. Meanwhile, in Doriath, Galadriel is gossiping with Melian and tells about the Silmarils and Valinor and stuff, but like leaves out the oath, the kinslaying, the doom of Vandos, all that downer stuff. It turns out that Melian was picking up a little bit of a weird vibe from Galadriel, like, there's something you're not saying. And then she even goes to Thingon and it's like, there's something about these Silmarils. It's not going to be good news. And this is why I think Thingon's a fucking idiot.
Thingol.
Because he hears...
Thingol.
What's that? Oh, Thingol, sorry.
You can switch with Shane. Now it makes sense.
That, like, he gets all this heads up and then still does all that shit with the Silmaril, whatever. Anyway, then we'll get to that.
Are you complaining about an elf making a bad decision? Because that hasn't happened yet.
I know, but you're like, Thingol, you're better than
he does this thing where, like, you
you're
keep,
better than
like, oh, this is a cool guy, this is someone I can root for, and they go and do something really dicky, and even Fingolfin, who I love at the end, like, he didn't have to do that. But there's very few
Right.
elves that remain this really honorable and true the entire way, and then that never stray from the path. But yeah, Thingol kind of did right up till the end.
Okay, so Melkor kind of has figured out what happened with the kinslaying and the boat burning, etc. So Círdan finally hears this story and goes to Thingol and's like, dude, this is what really happened. Like, it's not all just like shiny gems and shit. And so Thingol gets pissed, and because his people were the Teleri before he met up with Melian. So, the kinslaying affected him a lot. Finrod and Angrod are currently visiting their sister Galadriel at this time, and Finrod clams up when, asked to verify the truth, but Angrod opens up and says all these things, but, says that, well, we suffered over the ice and everything. So Thingol, kicks them out, but says, okay, well, you guys are actually cool, so you could come back. I'm just not happy with you right now. But, all the other sons of Fëanor, he won't let in. He also banned the speaking of Quenya within his borders. So that was the branching off from the Sindarin elves and the Kenyan elves. Quenyan, not Kenyan. So going back to Finrod, he had the same dream from Ulmo to build a strong hidden place. So he builds Nargothrond with the help of the elves. So and basically because the elf that he loved stayed in Valinor, so he just takes a vow of celibacy because he knows he needs to be able to be free in the future to basically kick ass. But again, that's foreshadowing future chapters. In this, you get the foreshadowing, and later on you'll see, and you may think Thingol's a good guy right now, but oh god, I hate him. Did you guys think that Finrod holding out was okay, or did Angrod betray him? And then just more about the constant foreshadowing of okay, so we're setting you guys up to start up these huge kingdoms, and guess what? You're all fucked anyway because every last one of you will be destroyed. So.
Well, it had to come out at one point, and I think it's better that it came out now before the wars really started in earnest, but at the same time it divided them even more where they could have been, stauncher allies.
I was like, go for it, Angrod. Tell them what the fuck happened.
Yeah, it just there's always this distrust between the elves now. No matter what they do, there's always this thing between them, which is like the curse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which also, it comes in later as well, and at least in my chapter, sort of, they at least mention something that will have an impact on them in that respect.
Angrod said, "Wherefore should we that endured the grinding ice bear the name of kinslayers and traitors?" He said, "Hell no, ain't gonna do it."
They were kinslayers, but it was kind of a misunderstanding.
Right. They came late. Yeah. They misunderstood what was going on. But yeah, I'm glad it's in the clear. But Thingol was, he reacted the way you'd expect someone to react who found out that these people killed, was it sister-in-law or sister-in-law?
Yeah, family.
Yeah, I think mother-in-law. No,
not just that.
His mother-in-law is Amaya.
But
he doesn't have.
He doesn't have a mother-in-law.
They all woke up as babies on the shores of the lake. Remember?
But it's not just that. They sort of also destroyed the best creation that they made. So it's also on top of everything else. But yeah, it's even though you could say, well, they didn't know what was happening, they still they could have asked what was going on. They didn't have to sort of fight immediately, but they did, and that's how it happened. It's people who are ignorant or even just stand aside and do nothing, they do sometimes the worst evil, because it's we're sort of accepting of the fact that we are doing something that's not right, or that something's happening that we don't really know of, and we sort of, out of allegiance, we sort of try to.
Yeah, it's they don't
help.
even have the excuse of just following orders, because they never even it was a split reaction, split second that they just joined in without thinking, so they don't even have that to fall back on.
Yeah, that's right.
Bloodthirsty elves.
All of them.
Yeah, not at all what we would have thought they were when we started with the Lord of the Rings and stuff. Which is,
that's why I love this book, because you get to see them at their. They say several times that the light of Ammon was in their eyes, and they were fresh. They're new, and they're doing great deeds. They do amazing things later on, but it seems like they're always much more thinking about it. Like Elrond takes forever to get out of Rivendell, and it's just. they're acting rather than thinking, and that's not always a good thing. But you're seeing them in their most awesome power that they ever had at any point in their history.
Yeah, once you've seen them act, you think to yourself, just think more. Don't act too much. We prefer you like you are. Don't go out of. Don't leave Rivendell. Just stay in there.
I think Fëanor cleans a lot of that up for them, though. Because after Fëanor charges in head first and gets his ass killed, they're pretty slow to step up to the plate after that. All of them are. Well, except for Fingolfin, who's like, I got this. Did you bring up the fact that Ulmo tells him about a warrior that is yet to come and leave a suit of armor for him in Vinyamar, and he gives him the exact specifications for the armor.
Really specific in this about the size and everything, but about Gondolin, you find that on your own.
They haven't even met men yet.
It's like Tolkien really wanted to describe that armor, but he didn't want to describe the way to Gondolin. So, well, what if Morgoth reads this description? Oh, I don't know. The only thing is that I feel like this is sort of the secret place. It reminds me of the classical Legend of the Fairies, sort of. Where you are when you enter a secret place and you're never allowed to leave, or when you leave, sort of a long time has passed and all that stuff, because that's what happens at least later on in my chapter with Hurin.
Yeah, we also know Gondolin was built in the image of Tyrion back in Valinor, and there's all sorts of echoes even in the description of the city of Minas Tirith. And I just want to read the description he gives of Gondolin here. It's really beautifully written, and it's one of the easiest things to picture when he describes it. It says, Gondolin upon Amon Gwareth became fair indeed and fit to compare even with elven Tyrion beyond the sea. High and white were its walls, and smooth its stairs, and tall and strong was the tower of the king. There shining fountains played, and in the courts of Turgon stood images of the trees of old, which Turgon himself wrought with elven craft. And the tree which he made of gold was named Glingal, and the tree whose flowers he made of silver was named Belthil. And then they go on to talk about how awesome Idril is. But it seems like he gives more description to the two trees, so we know Tolkien really liked his trees.
Yeah. Oh, you actually mentioned Minas Tirith. There's another Minas Tirith in this book, which is really ironic when we get to it. I'll try to mention
Minas
it.
Tirith just means Tower of Guard, and the names change over. Minas Tirith originally was Minas Anor because it was Tower of the Moon and of the Sun, and this is another Minas Tirith. Yeah, there's a lot of echoes.
So there's gonna be a third Minas Tirith.
I think there's just the two.
You got it, buddy. And
there's probably a lot of them, but these are the only two we see.
Yeah, because like I said, I haven't read ahead. I was like, oh, Minas Tirith, and I thought, no, that can't be the same place.
It's not. He's teasing you.
Then we also get Thingol's decree. Every time Thingol talks, it seems like he's yeah, but it's pretty nice line where he says, "Hear my words. Never again in my ear shall it be heard the tongue of those who slew my kin in Alqualande, nor in all my realm shall it be openly spoken while my power endures." So even right there, he's dropping in until I'm done and I'm dead. Yeah, but all the Sindar shall hear.
What he really meant was until Melian leaves me, because that's his power.
Finrod adds the awesome last name of Felagund after he carves his cave kingdom.
Is that name he choose that, or is that a name that's given to him by the dwarves because they helped him build it?
I think that's the name of his cave.
I think
he calls his land Felagund or something, and then he just takes the name on.
I thought that was strange. He would take on a name from a dwarven tongue. I didn't know if maybe that's just what the dwarves called him then on, or if that was actually the name he took.
No, there's people who call him Felagund.
Well, the narrator refers to him as Felagund more going forward than Finrod, or Finrod Felagund.
Right.
A lot of the elves have surnames or cognomens, as the Romans would call them.
God, I wish the men would have
Instead of
surnames.
just Bum and Bip and Bop, whatever.
Yeah. Bob, son of boy, son of guy. It's
actually the dwarven name that they give him. So it's like he just takes it. It's like, well, I might as well own it.
Right.
Own that name as well as I'm going to own these caves. It's Lord of the Caves or something like that. It translates into this.
So, the other big thing that's overbearing everything is just this sense of doom that even before these cities are built, they know that they're going to fall. And that's something that's, I don't think humans would ever be on board with this idea, because you can't think really past beyond your lifetime or your children's lifetime. But the fact that these elves are not just okay with it, but they go forward with it, knowing that it's not going to last. It's not going to be.
Yeah, we expect them to be like, why'd we build this again?
Because we had to.
Just like let's just sleep in tents from now on. We don't need to big cities. They're gonna be doomed anyway. So whatever.
All right, so let's move on to chapter 16, which is of Maeglin. And I've got the summary here, but this is one of the... We get a couple of these in the books where these little, like, mini self-contained stories with everything else going on in the background. And I really enjoy these, like this and Baron and Turin, because they're kind of like breaks from the ultimate, the main storyline. It's a little branch you can go off on, and by the end of it, you're right back on the, it doesn't change anything that from the major story. But I feel like it adds a lot of depth and a character to the story, because it's more human stuff. Well, elven, you know what I mean. Stuff actually going on. So Arethel is Fingolfin's daughter and sister to Turgon, and when he built Gondolin, she accompanied him to Gondolin. So after several hundred years, or an undetermined amount of time, she starts to get tired of Gondolin, and she wants to go visit her kin back in Hithlum, to visit their other brother Fingon. So Turgon really doesn't want her to leave, because like we said earlier, he doesn't want anybody to leave who knows the way to the city. And just to be clear, there is another way in the city. It's called the Hidden Way. It's like a dry riverbed, and there's a gate, and we don't know if there's magic involved, but there is another way in the city, other than just being dropped in by eagles, but that is the most direct route. So Turgon agrees to let her leave Gondolin, and she takes these companions with her, and on the road, she basically tells them that, hey, we're going to go visit the Sons of Feanor in the east instead, and they're not happy about that. She tries to pass through Doriath, which is right there to the south of Gondolin, but she's barred by the elves do not let her in there because she's under, her people partook in the killing of Elway's king, so she's not getting in. So she ends to go all the way around Doriath, and she passes through the woods of Non-Elmoth, which is a little to the east of Doriath, and that is where Eol lives. Eol, E-O-L, Eol, the dark elf, or a dark elf.
Eol.
So Eol kind of falls in love with her from afar, which happens a lot in Tolkien stories. He desired her, and he used his enchantments to make Arethel lose her way off the path, and instead of finding her way out of the forest, finds her way to his door. So Eol took her to wife, and Arethel remained in Non-Elmoth for many years. She eventually bore him a son, Maeglin, who we know took after... Maeglin. I like Maeglin.
That's fine. Right. Go for it. Maeglin it is.
Ruth. Fine.
Just call him Bubba.
Well, he doesn't have a name yet because he's not 12. So the kid learned much of his father's craft, but resembled his mother and the Noldor in appearance. Arethel grew restless of Non-Elmoth, and Maeglin, he gets the name Maeglin eventually when he turns 12. So Arethel grew restless, and she wants to go back to her people, but Eol basically does not want her to leave. Maeglin eventually convinces his mother that they've got to get out of there because he wants to visit his family because he's heard all these amazing stories about Gondolin and Turgon. So they plan their escape when Eol was out visiting the dwarves because he's really good buddies with the dwarves. They've taught him a lot about their dwarven stuff. They escape and make their way back to Gondolin. Long story short, they get there. Eol goes east because he thinks they're going to visit the Sons of Feanor. When he does visit the Sons of Feanor, they're complete dicks to him, just like their father would have been. Curfin particularly says it's not cool that you married our cousin out of without our leave. So Eol then flies west to try to get to Gondolin because he's like, this is where they're going, and he arrives just as they're making their way inside the Hidden Way. So Maeglin and his mother get to Gondolin. There's a nice little reunion between Turgon and Arethel. Maeglin completely falls in love with Gondolin and Turgon. He thinks he's the best. And then that's when the city guard find Eol trying to...
You're my hero.
What's that?
He's like saying, you're my hero. Something, I don't know. It's
That's
like,
not remotely creepy.
In the door. Yeah.
So the guards bring Eol in, who's trying to sneak in. Turgon isn't happy that Eol stole his sister and wife. Eol shows up, wants his wife back and kid back. Turgon says, you kind of stole her from us, and you can't leave anyway because now you know the way here, so you can either stay here and live here, or I can kill you. And basically, Maeglin does nothing to stop this. He doesn't say any word in defense of his father, and that's when Eol kind of says, I'm not going to choose either of these ways out, and he somehow snuck in a spear, which he was hiding, and he got to see the king with a spear. So then he tries to kill his son, not Turgon. He throws a spear at his son. He says, this choice I take for my son as well. And of course, Arethel jumps in front of it, gets struck with the spear. It's poisoned. She dies. And that's when Turgon, completely gets pissed and basically throws Eol off this precipice in the city called the Caragdor, which is pretty cool. And the Romans had a little place like this too, where they used to throw people down and crimes against the state, and they'd tumble down and then they'd cut them into pieces.
So did Little Robin.
Yeah.
Robin Aaron.
Yeah, the Moondor. You got that too.
This is their
Yes,
Moondor.
basically. So
Probably,
Maeglin basically is cool with this, and he takes Turgon as his king and lord, but he falls in love with Idril, Turgon's daughter, who's beautiful, but she's also his first cousin, and the elves don't do that. So he pouts for the next 100 years or so, but continues to rise in Turgon's court. So that's basically the story there.
I was surprised they weren't down with the first cousin thing. I mean, just being like a limited number of people and old-fashioned, it kind of surprised me. Like being an old time,
Yeah,
you
but
know?
this isn't like this is first times. Like they don't have they can't start messing up the bloodlines if the first couple generations, because that would just lead to trouble.
Yeah, but I just think of it like old royals and kings and stuff, and they
it's
were all
perfectly
in
fine in the
Reread,
Middle
so
Ages,
kinda...
and even up till much more recently.
But these guys want to keep track of their family trees, so they're not gonna do that.
It's harder to make the tree when it goes straight.
Yeah. When it's a wreath.
Just kind of surprised me hearing that.
So the whole basically there's a little debate as to did Eol trick his wife into marrying him, because we know he tricked her into finding her way to him, but they do say that she didn't go unwillingly into the marriage, but it's never really clear as to if he basically used his magical abilities to force her to fall in love with him.
Dude, he roofied the forest.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It looks like he sort of made her come to his door, but I don't think that she was forced into it. But it's just like she wasn't allowed to leave after that. So he doesn't.
It's like she fell in love with her own father.
Yeah, he complains that he can't leave Gondolin after he finds it, but then he just wants to keep her away as well. So it's really hypocritical.
There's just a line in there somewhere. It says something like, she didn't totally hate it all the time. She liked the woods a little bit, and she liked walking with him sometimes. Just kind of implied to me that she'd rather not be there.
It is not said that Arathel was wholly unwilling, nor that her life in Non-Elmoth was hateful to her for many years. So it eventually did become that, but it wasn't so right off the bat. So I guess they had some good years.
Well, he was unsatisfied living in Doriath, so he left. I don't know if that is any indication of his... I don't know, he doesn't like paradise, probably. He just likes to be a loner somewhat. So
he doesn't want anybody to have lordship over him. He wants his own realm.
See, I understand that. He's a Cinderin elf. He's buddies with the dwarves. They're teaching him how to make cool stuff. He develops his own new material, Galvorn, which I think might be like Mithril because it's got some similar characteristics.
Except for it's black.
No, but it's like it's light as a feather, but it's hard as rock, and it can withstand an arrow. But he's just doing his own thing, and I don't think he could be blamed for that. Up until the point where he
apparently it can talk.
Oh, that's right. That's
especially
the sword that Anglical's made of, right?
That's Telkar, something like that.
He might have shown it. He was probably involved with it.
Especially since he gets shat on by Fëanor's sons so early, so you're kind of like rooting for the guy because he's just looking for his wife, and then he's killing his wife just by accident. And not by accident, no, but
he poisoned that shit. He was trying to kill somebody.
No,
they don't pat him down. He's coming before this immortal king. You pat him down.
Those
guards would have followed him to the ground.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to revise that security system.
Was this
if you want to keep your place a secret?
Like Lincoln created the Secret Service the day he was shot. Turkin probably just signed the papers to create the Elven Secret Service, but they haven't been formed yet.
So he's J. Edgar Hoover.
So they have these guards just standing there that probably do nothing all of the time. They're probably eating apples or something. And this guy just walks in hey, what the fuck are you doing here? And then they just take him straight to the king without even checking him for weapons.
Well, I imagine it's just magic. Something that he hit on his.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah. Maybe they don't take the weapons away because they just assume that he's not gonna do anything. He's not gonna be able to do anything. Probably they just think, oh well, it's his spear. Yeah, let's just let him keep it. No worries.
Well, they were wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Maeglin, when his mother is telling him the stories, all he could think of is oh, so there's no heir, and Idril's single. I can get in there. He's thinking that before they even leave.
I think you're putting that a little thing.
And then he gets there and
giving him too much credit.
I don't think I am. He thinks it talks about how he has it in his mind.
No, it's definitely there, but he's growing up in this place that doesn't have sunlight. Basically, he's just living in this dark, he's got some cool toys to play with, but he doesn't have much else, and he's always enamored by these stories that his mother's told him of the place, where she came from. This also has I don't know if your edition, I have the illustrated edition. This is one of my favorite paintings by Ted Naismith of Eol being cast off the cliff, and you've got Maeglin doing his little emo glance over his shoulder, and you've got Turgon there holding his. They mention he has this like Staff of Doom or something, and it's like this carved. It looks like a skeleton hand, but it's pretty cool painting. And you see the mountains in the background, but it's very very pretty. Just mentioning it.
I just want to point
Basically-
out again, they don't call him a dark elf because he's evil. It's because
It's emo.
he never
no, I thought you
been
meant Maeglin.
but they
The
never
trees,
saw
that's
the
what-
trees.
Because at first, when I read it the first time, I just thought, oh, he's the goth guy, like the guy who just says, you people.
Well, they do say he did dress in black, and he was always, garbed in that stuff that he created.
And his metal was
Yeah.
black, yeah.
So don't don't get with a possessive emo guy. It's the lesson here.
Yeah, it is weird how he treats them like his possessions.
Yeah, but this is a guy who is sort of living by himself, so he doesn't have any social skills, probably. It's also weird, like, because sometimes she says, well, she likes, as you said, she likes talking to him and stuff. I assume that he has some kind of, at least he's holding up a good conversation, probably. Yeah, he's really, really possessive of what he has.
Yeah, so I kind of do feel for him. Like he's made it to this amazing place, and it doesn't have an heir. He thinks that he's got the inn because Turgon basically adopts him as his son. The way the chapter ends with you get Maeglin's view, and then you get Idril's sort of mirror view of him. And I just want to read the quote because it's pretty cool. Where it says, "For from his first days in Gondolin, he had borne a grief ever worsening that robbed him of all joy. He loved the beauty of Idril and desired her without hope. Idril loved Maeglin not at all, and knowing his thought of her, she loved him the less, for it seemed to her a thing strange and crooked in him, as indeed the Eldar ever since have deemed it an evil fruit of the kinslaying, whereby the shadow of the curse of Mandos fell upon the last hope of the Noldor." It's everything lives in the shadow of the doom and the curse.
And you also forgot the thing to mention that that Eol curses Maeglin, right? Before he dies. Yeah, and so he says that he will betray. He would betray them as well,
It says,
or
"Here
something.
you shall fail of all your hopes, and here may you yet die the same death as I." And at this point, I'm going to assume that he's going to die the exact same death, that he's going to fall off a cliff, and of course that's what happens.
Yeah.
So you've got Maeglin at Gondolin. We've seen Gondolin a little bit. Maeglin's there. Maeglin, you will see him again when Turin shows up, and you get some more stuff going on in Gondolin.
Tuor.
Well, Turin shows up also, doesn't he?
No, Hurin and Hurin.
I can't wait till we
both
get there.
show
We're
up.
going to have to put a big disclaimer. We are not saying Hua. We are saying Hua.
War.
Yeah, so my bad, tour. All right, so that's our first little self-contained branch off story. Now we're back to the main story, and the men are finally going to show up. This is actually a separate recording I'm doing with Alix, because she couldn't make it to the original recording, so we're going to be discussing Chapter 17 of The Coming of Men into the West. Alix will do her recap, and then we'll have a little discussion. Do you want to just introduce yourself and do your recap, Alix?
Yep. So this is Alix. I'm iWendiel on the forums. So I'll be recapping Chapter 17 of The Coming of Men into the West. So eventually, about 300 years after the coming of the Noldor, men come into Beleriand too. The first encounter between Noldor and men was when Finrod Felagund met Beor and his people in the woods at night while singing. Elves like to meet new people that way, apparently, because that was how Thingol met Melian in the other chapter that I recapped.
It's not creepy at all.
No. It's perfectly normal. Also, there is a sun at this point, so they should be able to meet during the day now. Anyway, so Felagund sings for the men, and they are so amazed by his beauty and wisdom that at first they mistake him for one of the Valar. But Felagund clears things up when he could have totally pretended to be Manwë forever. And they learn to communicate, and Felagund finds out that he can even read their minds. I find this pretty amazing, and it's just like one throwaway line that says, "Now the Eldar were beyond all people skilled in tongues, and Felagund discovered also that he could read in the minds of men such thoughts as they wished to reveal in speech, so that their words were easily interpreted."
Yeah, we've known that the elves, or at least some of the Eldar, have that ability that they can like peer into, and in the movies they do it over the top with, like actually speaking to each other,
like,
with
Elrond communicate
and
telepathically.
Galadriel. Yeah, but it seems like some of the at least the kings of the higher Noldor can, and I guess men's minds are a little weaker, so they can just get all the information. I think it's kind of intrusive, but at least he's got to know what's going on. So he's, if you got it, you got to use it.
It's like he meets this whole new species of people and they have a different language. And then he's like, oh, but never mind, I can read their minds. So it's not like we can't communicate. It just feels a little easy. So Beor and and Felagund become BFFs after talking about the darkness that lay upon the hearts of men. So I don't really know what that darkness is supposed to be. Perhaps Morgoth's attempts to corrupt them.
Well, we know that the Wood Elves had left some darkness behind right when they came over, like a couple hundred years before. So we know that they were running from fell beasts or something was going on, and we're assuming it's Morgoth because who else could it be? And he does have contact with the other men, the Easterlings that come later. So we know that he's got his fingers in them, and they're trying to run away from that. But it's strange that they're running towards him, away from it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's their topic of conversation, which is very lighthearted. So then the Green Elves of Assyrian, they decide that they don't want to have men dwell around their kingdom. For some reason, they just are really rude to men for no reason. And they send them a message. They don't even talk to them directly. They send a message to Felagund saying, Lord, if you have power over these newcomers, bid them return by the ways that they came, or else to go forward. For we desire no strangers in this land to break the peace in which we live. And these folk are hewers of trees and hunters of beasts. Therefore, we are their unfriends. And if they will not depart, we shall afflict them in all ways that we can. So they're really hostile towards men. And they're not really justified in that.
Well, they kind of are, because these are the same elves that there were so many of them, and in the first battle they won, but they lost wasn't Denethor the lord of them, and then they lost so many people that at this point they kind of just tapped out and were like, we just want to live in the rivers and the trees, and now these other guys are coming through. They've never met
these people. They've never even talked to them. They don't know what they're like. They're just making assumptions based on.
I'm an Eldar apologist, so.
Okay, I'm on the side of men, so we're gonna have arguments.
No, I understand.
No, but
they do come across as dicky as the Noldor, so it fits with what we know.
It's just that in contrast to Thingol, which I'm going to talk about later, they just seem like they're not making any effort whatsoever to be friendly towards anybody. Right. They're just shutting themselves off and being like, no, we don't want to talk to you. So Beor leaves these lands because he's not allowed there. And his folks settle in Estelad. And later Beor leaves his people and goes to live with Felagund in Nargothrond. And then other groups of men start coming to Beleriand. The Haladin, who, after meeting the friendship of the Green Elves too, settle in Thargelion with Caranthir, son of Fëanor, and Marek and his people, who settle next to Beor's people, and they're actually pretty close to Beor and his people. So the Noldor in general are really friendly to men, and they named them Edain, and they invite them to come dwell among the Noldor. However, Thingol is not too friendly towards men. He doesn't allow them into Doriath, but then again, he doesn't even allow Noldor into Doriath. He and Melian, they have this premonitory dream that one of men, even of Beor's house, shall indeed come, and the girdle of Melian shall not restrain him. For doom greater than any power shall send him, and the songs that shall spring from that coming shall endure when all Middle-earth is changed.
He's nobody. We don't need to worry about him.
Pretty ominous.
I think that was Melian, because Thingol was all like, I'm not letting anybody in, and she's saying, well, that's all good and well, but eventually one person will come that even I won't be able to keep out.
All right. And then among the men of Estelad, dissent starts to arise concerning the Eldar and Morgoth. Some people want to help the Eldar in the war against Morgoth, and others don't. And Morgoth tries to turn them against the elves. And he uses this very freaky stratagem.
This is the doppelganger?
And we find it, I don't remember this guy's name.
Amlok, right?
Amlok, yeah.
Son of
one
Amlok.
who seemed to be Amlok, but in fact wasn't actually him. And he has this really, really cool, evil speech about how elves are evil.
Basically, all the men had this giant assembly where they were trying to decide what they were going to do, where they were going to go, and who they were going to join, and if they were going to take part, because the Noldor basically want them because they're more arms and more swords that they can use against Morgoth. I think Bereg and Amlok were the two guys that were speaking, and Bereg wanted to stay out of it, saying, let the Eldar look into it. Our lives are short enough.
There arose one who seemed to all to be Amlok, son of Imlek, speaking fell words that shook the hearts of all who heard him. All this is but elvish lores, tale to beguile newcomers that are unwary. The sea has no shore, there is no light in the west. You have followed a full fire of the elves to the end of the world. Which of you has seen the least of the gods? Who has beheld the dark king of the north? Those who seek the dominion of Middle-earth are the Eldar. Greedy for wealth, they have delved in the earth for its secrets and have stirred to wrath the things that dwell beneath it. And they have ever done it as they have ever done and ever shall. Let the orcs have the realm that is theirs, and we will have ours. There is room in the world if the Eldar would let us be. So then the next day, this guy is like, what? I never said that.
He's like, hey guys, what's going on? They're like, what are you talking about? They gave this awful speech. So, okay, because he was convinced, he was kind of on the fence originally, but then the fact that Morgoth sent this basic spy who impersonated him to try to get the people to not listen to the Eldar, and then he basically swore like an oath saying, yes, now you believe us that there is a Dark Lord and his spies and emissaries are all among us, for he fears us. So now he's like, now we're gonna, and now I have a quarrel of my own with this master of lies, which will last to my life's end, he says. So so basically another one of Morgoth's plans goes completely wrong, and now he's sworn these men who might have been on the fence to join against him.
Yeah, that wasn't a very well thought out plan. No. It's like, if it had been an anonymous guy that no one knew, well, he wouldn't have had like the credibility that Amlek had, but he wouldn't have risked being uncovered this easily, because this is like maybe 12 hours later that Amlek goes, what? That wasn't me. There was a spy.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly like a Manchurian candidate guy who'd been, embedded for years. He just basically took over for somebody, so he wasn't playing the long game there. But still, it's a little cool aside, because the men have just shown up, and even right off the bat, he's trying to sow disorder and distrust among them.
Yes. So the other groups of men, the Haladin, they are apparently happy and immune to the lies and deceit. So Morgoth sends an orc raid against them. After that, Haleth leads them to Estelad and then further westward in a slightly Nymeria-like journey through Beleriand, where she leaves some of the people behind at every stop. And eventually she ends up in Brithil, and the Haladin end up scattered kind of all over the place.
But they do end up playing a pretty large role in the Tale of Turin, because that's where Turin ends up among them. So they kind of dip out of the story a little bit, but they do show up again. And it's also, maybe, I'm trying to think, it's one of the few people that are actually led by a woman in all of Tolkien's works.
Yes.
I mean, you have Galadriel and you have, Lorien, but still, this is like...
But she's like a war leader.
Yeah, she's a warrior queen, basically. And
yeah, so that's pretty special.
Even though history is full of warrior queens and who did lead similar type people. The introduction to Hador, Lorindal, and then you get a lot of family trees of son of this, and 12 generations.
I skipped over that because we get that. We also get that later with Hurin and Huror.
Yeah,
I think it's told again when they come up.
Yeah, they're all descended from this house, because there's basically three houses of men that kind of take up.
Yeah, the House of Beor, the House of Marek, and the Haladin.
The end where the elves actually, when Finrod finds that Beor is growing old and he dies, and he's kind of freaked out because they didn't know that they were mortal. What? He's like, well, oh, that's what that beard was, and that's why he was like walking with a cane for all those years. But it says that Beor died when he had lived 93 years, 44 of which he had served King Felagund. And when he lay dead, of no wound or grief, but stricken by age, the Eldar saw for the first time the swift waning of the life of men, and the death of weariness, which they knew not in themselves, and they grieved greatly for the loss of their friends. So it's really something that the elves had never had to deal with before, natural death, which is kind of something we take for granted, or at least as a given.
Or natural.
Right, it is natural. Yeah, I mean, in the other chapters we were told about, the Easterlings, or the swarthy men that come over, that we know some of them end up being, enemies going forward to these people that were introduced. So not much actually happens, but it's just an introduction of characters that will become pretty important.
Yeah, it's like introduction of men and like their relationship to the elves. I think it's cool that, like, on one hand we have Beor and Felagund, which are BFFs, and then the other elves are like really hostile towards men and don't want to see them anywhere near them.
But Thingol is hostile towards everybody. He doesn't want anybody who's
Thingol
not.
Doesn't want anyone near. And then the green elves don't want to see men. And then the Noldor are really cool with men. Like,
Yeah, I always felt that the Noldor. I mean, we know they're the most amazing fighters, and they, but they can't have had hundreds of thousands of people come over, especially all the ones that died along the way, and even like that second battle where they get there and then they beat off Morgoth's forces. It always seemed like they wouldn't have that many guys to do it, so it makes perfect sense that they want these men, even if they live short lives, but they can have a couple thousand of them to bolster their defenses. It makes sense, but it kind of took me by surprise that they're going to buddy up to them when they haven't necessarily proven themselves or have any real experience. But they knew they were coming also. These were the second children of Iluvatar that have been promised for, hundreds of thousands of years and going back to the beginning.
Does anybody wish that Tolkien had just given them last names? It would have been so much easier. I have the hardest time keeping track of who belongs to who.
Well, up till this point, it was just, elves don't have generations really, so it's just like when they have kids, it's just another branch of the tree. But since there's like 9 generations of men in the next couple chapters, it does. It would have been nice, but you got like the 3 families. You got the B family, you got the C family, and you got the M family or the H family. I forget. So all their names kind of begin with the same letter. So that's how you keep it straight.
Yeah. So a fellow
Until they start interbreeding.
Yeah.
The green elves are real dicks to the men, though. Just saying, like they, just
keep it moving.
They want them to get out.
Yeah, until like a whole force of them come through, and then they're like, maybe they'll just go by on their own.
I always feel bad for the Green Elves because like they fought in the first battle and they were almost all completely wiped out. So like I understand how they don't want to deal with this shit anymore. They just want to sing their songs and hang out in the rivers. That's fine.
Just go to Doriath, right? I mean, just move.
And some of them do this. So basically, the men come over the mountains in the time between during the long peace, and Finrod is the first one elf to find them, and he sees them from afar, and he decides to sneak into their camp while they're asleep and sing them a song. So that's the first image that the men have of this king of the elves singing a song to them.
And no, this is totally not creepy.
Well, they did think didn't they think he was a god? And like he's like, well, I don't understand your language, but I understand your simple minds.
Yeah, he could almost like read their minds, and their words weren't that different. Like they shared a lot of the same roots.
Right. And then in this chapter, is this the one where they discuss like they don't know why they started moving west, but they heard that like there's some power there that they wanted to go see.
Beor is like the head of the men that he finds, and he says, "A darkness lies behind us, and we have turned our backs upon it, and we do not desire to return thither even in thought. Westwards our hearts have been turned, and we believe that there we shall find light." And it's a capital L, so they're seeking more than just light.
I love the elves where they're like, hey, what were things like where you guys came from? Is it like pretty cool there? Where'd you guys wake up? And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't remember. I wasn't there.
Yeah, at this point, it's the whole thing about the physicals. Like, Fingon doesn't know that they're any different because we don't think there's much physical difference, but some of them are probably older than others, and so he might, he doesn't know that they're going to die naturally. That comes later, but he knows that they're different people for some reason, but we don't know how.
He must see an old guy and be like, what the fuck happened to that guy? How old is that dude? You must be thousands of years old.
There. He's the old guy, and he's the one who made the harp that he's singing with. So he's in the picture, at least. He's the old guy with the white beard, so he knows something's up.
It's like, what's that hair on your face?
Something on your face.
but
Kieran has some of that stuff.
Probably, yeah.
But this is actually why I really like what they did in the movies, because they differentiate them with the pointy ears. So at least now we know why. I mean, that's. I mean, if they just looked alike, then you would go like, "Oh, that's a bit disappointing." But
Ted Naismith does that in almost every painting of an elf. He's got the hair over the ears. There's only a couple where you actually see the ears, and they are pointy, but he keeps it separate. Well, he leaves some to be desired.
Yeah, when it's like cold, you want those hairs over your ears, not behind your ears. So I don't know. Just it seems like really, just to show, these are elves. See the pointy ears. Yeah, I find it interesting that they have like Beor. So maybe Beorn in The Hobbit is sort of related. I don't know. Are they descendants from each other?
Beorn's a bear, and these guys are pretty bear-looking in the way they're dressed. Not that that's my thing, but
Cool.
Is this a chapter where that lady gets the name? They say a name like the Manish or something.
Oh, yeah, Haleth, I think.
It's like Manish or something. I was like, that's either the coolest nickname for a woman ever or like the most sexist
It's
nickname
probably
ever.
the latter.
And of course, like Morgoth tries to get men on his side, and so he lies to them, right? But they don't believe him, and so he says like, "Well, I don't need you. I just sent my orcs," and then he doesn't seem to be like really skilled at diplomacy.
Is this the chapter with the doppelganger?
No,
Or
that's
is that
here.
the next chapter?
No, it's this one at the end.
Yeah.
It's, he tries to say like, "Well, I'm just gonna send orcs against them," and then Palith leads them to Estelad.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, you weren't here. You think he would have killed that guy before going in pretending to be that guy?"
Well, Alix has a quote again. Thingol not picking up on like what Melian is saying. It says, "One of men, even of Beor's house, shall indeed come, and the girl Melian shall not restrain him. For doom greater than my power shall send him, and the songs that shall spring from that coming shall endure when all Middle Earth is changed."
And she tells that to Galadriel, right?
I thought she told that to Thingol.
Yeah, it is to Thingol, I think, because
Oh.
he's telling her that they're not coming in.
Oh,
Yeah,
then it's
they're-
later on that she like turns to Galadriel and like, "We're gonna let the men talk, but this is how it's really gonna happen."
So I figure we got another
So,
3 hours to go.
yeah.
So let's start the last chapter.
Let's start the damn battle. So it's like of the Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of
Yeah, just before we
Fingolfin, right?
start.
Fingolfin wants war with the help of men, but the Noldor they don't know how strong he is, how strong Morgoth is yet. So they hope that they can just contain him at the moment. So it's like and then. They wait, and so the Noldor don't listen to Fingolfin or Fëanor's sons because they don't trust them at all, and only Angrod and Amras agree with Fingolfin because they live in places that are close to Thangorodrim, and but there's currently no war, and then they wait some more. Until 455 FA after Fingon's arrival, when Morgoth sends fire and smoke from Thangorodrim and burns the whole place because he says like I don't like you guys sitting outside my door, go away, and he burns them all to death, and they don't have any tombs left. I mean, there are many elves that die, many elves die here, and it's called Anfauglith now, which is by gaping dust. So it's like a desert in front of Angband now.
Sorry,
So
I think it's gasping dust. Right?
yeah, gasping dust. Sorry, I probably didn't write that down right. And so he's. I mean, at least it says that he could have actually won entirely if he hadn't been like so full of hatred of the elves. Yeah. So then when that fire basically erupts, it starts Dagor Bragolach, so the War of Sudden Flame, which is the fourth battle. The official one.
This is really kind of the beginning of the end for the elves in Beleriand. Even though there is another war, but they never really return to where they were.
It's like this one wasn't even necessary, but it's that's Morgoth's way. Glaurung comes out, the father of the dragons, and is now fully grown, so he doesn't have anyone to fear. So Morgoth be like, yeah, you go now. He has Balrogs and orcs as well, and they all lay siege to many of the Noldor's fortresses, and they take pathways and all that stuff. Some of the elves flee, like to Doriath and Nargothrond. Those are the main places, and also Syrian. The men, it's something so big that even the men who are in the east, like the Swarthy men or Easterlings, aware of what's happening, and that's why I assume that they come over later. So Finarfin's sons are the ones that are most touched by the war. So Angrod and Aignor and Bregolas die, but Barahir, who is Bregolas' brother, he survives the fight and goes west.
These are men you're talking about, right?
Yeah, these are men, yeah. Barahir and Bregolas are men that are friends with Finarfin's sons.
So,
anyway.
yeah, we should say just basically when men came in, like a lot of them took service in the elves' house, and they became their kind of right hand, their underlings, but they were almost equals. They took part in the wars, and they added to the strength of the elves against Morgoth. So,
Yeah, the elves were like, "You see how fast these guys breed? Those are numbers, man." Reinforcements.
Arrow fodder.
And so Finrod gets saved by Barahir, and so he gives Barahir his ring and swears that he will help his house whenever it's needed. And that's why I made that's why I made the annotation that Aragorn is basically going to wear that ring later. It's a really old ring.
To what happens in the fourth age, a third age.
Maybe he's the Lord of the Ring after all. No. And Barahir is now the legitimate heir to the House of Beor, and he goes back to Dorthonion, but most of his kin flee and hide in Hithlum. So yeah, Morgoth's attack is so powerful that Fingolfin and Finrod are unable to help Finhalfin's sons. There are some people who die. Hador Lorindal, also a man, whilst defending Fingolfin, and so Gundor, his son, dies with him, and Galdor the Long becomes basically the heir to that house, the House of Hador. And so Hithlum remains unconquered due to the strength and height of the mountains that surround it, because it keeps the fires at bay, and men and elves sort of valiantly defend it. And so Fëanor's son are losing the war. So I put all the different things that are happening there. Yeah, they lose the pass of Arglon. Kerrigal and Curufin flee to Nargothrond. But it also is made clear that they should have probably have stayed east with their own people later. We'll see why. Maedhros fights like one returned from the dead, as it said probably in the English version. Since he's come back from Thangorodrim, he's sort of like his spirit burns like a fire in him now as well. So yeah, they lose Lothland because Glaurung comes and breaks through Maedhros' defenses.
So basically, just like to keep it in, to paint the pictures, the elves basically lose everything in the east except for Himring, which is like it's a hill, it's a last holdout, and everybody flees west to Nargothrond, to Doriath. And in the north, basically everything is over. Ardgallen is overrun, Dorthonion is overrun, but they hold up the mountains of Hithlum, kind of protect them, and Tolsirion, I believe, is like the stronghold on the slopes of the mountain, and they turn them back.
Yeah,
so it's not a complete victory in the west, but in the east they're pretty much overrun
until something else happens. And so yeah, the rumors of the fall of Dorthonion and the death of Finhalfin's son come to Hithlum, and Fingolfin despairs and rides to Thangorodrim on his horse Rochalor, I think. And all who see him ride through Beleriand think he's Orome returned to Middle Earth, right? And so he challenges Morgoth to a duel. Be like, I want to fight you. And Morgoth, he sort of is unsure first, but then he calls him names, and so he says, "All right, but I get up." And so he gets the big warhammer Grunt, the hammer of the underworld, and a big black shield, and so he's like a tower, and they fight. Morgoth basically receives 7 wounds during the fight, and he's not gonna heal from that pain anytime. And he tries to. It says he tries to smash Fingolfin 3 times with his hammer, but he only manages to sort of smash holes in the ground because Fingolfin always escapes. Basically, at some point he just falls because there's so many holes in the ground. So Morgoth sort of puts his foot on his neck and sort of kills him like that. But while he does it, Fingolfin puts his sword in his foot, Sword Ringil, and Morgoth sort of limps from that day onward. And he sort of breaks the king's body, and he wants to give it to his wolves to eat. That's when the Lord of the Eagles comes in and saves at least the dead body and sort of brings it to Gondolin. But he scratches Morgoth's face. And so it's Sorondor, right? So he scratches Morgoth's face. Morgoth will bear those scars in his face forever as well. And yeah, it's interesting that neither the orcs nor the elves, they make no songs about this battle, because they're sort of like, well, whoa, you guys do your big guys, right? We don't. There's no need for us to make you even better. So I just wrote down like I was a bit surprised that the orcs didn't gloat about it.
Well, we don't have any orc books. We don't know.
Well, the reason why is it's too sad for the elves to make stories about it. And if you're Morgoth, you don't want them to write stories about how this just lowly elf cut you 7 times and crippled your foot. I mean, you don't need that.
Yeah, that's they don't like to be reminded of the fact that they sort of basically lost, at least in this situation. But
and does anyone else feel bad for Morgoth at this point, because he's got like his foot stabbed, his hands burned from a Silmaril, his head's on fire all the time because they're on his head, and and now he gets his foot stabbed, and now his face is scratched by eagles. It's just like, what do I have to do?
It's
All
like-
decisions
Well, I
he
know.
made.
Well, he just like wanted to be loved.
No, he wanted to be worshipped,
He's like the
not
devil.
loved.
He's the devil. That's why he's limping. I think that's what it's supposed to remind us of, because it's sort of like the cloved hooves and all that sort of thing.
As if we didn't have
Like,
any
you know.
enough comparisons to
Then-
Satan.
He's
Now
Satan.
I'm going to be
He's Satan.
subtle.
Yeah. Well, who's Fingolfin? Yeah, probably some kind of angel. And so now he rests. Fingolfin's body rests on the pyramid that Turgon built for him. No orc would dare defile that place. And so Fingon declares himself the new lord of the house Fingolfin and king of the Noldor. And he sends his son Irainion, who is named Gil-galad later on, to the Grey Havens, right? just in passing. And so Morgoth now holds the north, but Barahir stays in Dorthonion, and Morgoth hunts his people to death. Only a few remain, and those become outlaws, right? They sort of
It's the
follow
number
him.
12 shows up a lot,
yeah.
in actual mythology and in Tolkien. So it's this band of Robin Hood guys who are basically hiding out, guerrilla tactics, trying to keep the fight going, and slowly losing.
Yeah, and so Barahir. So they talk about Barahir's wife leading giving weapons to the women and leading them out of the place that they're in, and so she's called Imeldia the Man-Hearted.
That's who you're thinking
it's
of,
like,
the Man-Hearted.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's a sort of Tolkien at least had a big problem with women characters, but at least he wrote like Eowyn to be a really good female character. But it's medieval, right? So you wouldn't expect anything else.
Yeah,
either.
I was trying to think if if Tolkien, you guys know the Bechdel test. Like, I don't
you have
think
to
these
have.
books come close to passing that test. Like, is there ever a scene where there's two female elves or women talking to each other?
No.
Well, just here,
Yeah,
Million and
Galadriel
but
and
they're
Melian.
They're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about men.
About men.
Almost had it there.
Oh wow, he didn't consider that. Luthien does a lot of stuff. So she leads them out of there. They go to Dor Lomin, where the Haladin live, right? And so we get the names of the 12 companions, and of those I'll only name Beren, who is Barahir's son.
Who will be important
And
in the next chapter.
he will be doing something somewhat slightly
He's
relevant.
the only one that lives.
Yeah. And Baragont and Belegont, so who are his nephews. So those are the only two that I'll mention. And so they're desperate and could and would not flee because their houses were destroyed and their children and wives either dead or fled or enslaved, right? And so they are hunted like animals. They want to get as far away from America as possible. The Noldor hold the pass of Sirion for nearly 2 years, but once Fingolfin is dead, like Sauron, Gorthaur in Sindarin comes and wages battle against Orodreth, the keeper of the tower. So that's what the first time like Sauron does actually something actively. It's like, yay, the big bad, who is not a big bad yet, is gonna make his entrance. And so he's a mighty magician and lord of the werewolves, and so he corrupts whoever it says like he corrupted whoever he ruled and all that sort of thing. So he has this, like a big reputation, and he takes Minas Tirith. Oh, the irony I wrote here, because it's like, yeah, you
got it.
It's like you managed to take it once, you didn't manage to take it twice.
And he
and-
renames it
or address-
Werewolf Island.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, that's so much better. It's Tollingaroth. That sounds better, I guess. And so slowly Morgoth takes over Beleriand and they encircle Doriath. So it's like the island in the big sea of awfulness. He sends his spies into the world to spread rumors and to create discord amongst men and elves. Their lies would be believed by many due to the kinslaying of Aqualunde, and they even took on a grain of truth, as it says, because of the Noldor's immense fear and despair, and so of treason. And the Noldor, basically, they feared treason amongst their own kin the most, and hence those that are released from Angband are either excommunicated or avoided. And most of them are tied to Morgoth's will anyway, so even when they're released, they sort of return back to him somehow.
That was one of the things that was pretty brutal. That even if you do escape, that you're still not trusted by the people who you used to love you.
Yeah, it's like, even if you're let free, like you have to, at some point you're gonna come back to him anyway, unless you escape. And if you escape from his will, then basically no one's gonna want to be around you anyway. So it's like you have to wander alone in the wilderness. And so Morgoth pretends to be merciful when confronted with men, and so he tells them that their pain and anguish is the Noldor's doing, who usurped their who usurp their rule, and he promises them rewards for their cooperation. But the men of the three houses of the Edain just don't listen to him, and they said, get out. Even those he exposed to torture. So it's like, yeah, you tortured us. We're totally gonna trust you now. And so that's the time when the first swarthy men come to Beleriand, who are the Easterlings. We also know from the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, those are not probably not
that's
the
like
same
just because
ones.
they're from the east,
Yeah.
like these guys east. So the Easterlings that attack Minas Tirith in 5,000 years are probably not like related to these guys. They're just Easterlings is always that term that's given to like the men who joined the bad guy.
But I'd like to just let me dream. I'd like to pretend that they're the same guys because it's like at least it creates continuity somewhat. Many of them are closer to the dwarves than the elves, and there are two main chiefs, Bor and Ulfang the Black. House of Bor stay. I mean, it says in the same chapter like House of Bor will stay loyal, and Ulfang's son would follow Caranthir and show themselves to be
that
traitors.
happens later, so we'll get to that.
It's just like we're given a heads
it's more
up.
foreshadowing. Plus, you're named the Accursed. You're not going to be a good guy.
It's like it's also really subtle.
For the rest of this chapter, if we can just say that Hurin and Huar show up, they go to Gondolin, and then they come out.
They try to avoid the orcs, and then so they're saved by two eagles and brought to Gondolin. And so Turgon doesn't want to let them go because he likes them so much. And after a year, they ask him like to get back to their kin because they make basically the point that they are mortal, and so their lifespans are much shorter. They swear an oath not to reveal where Gondolin is, and Maeglin also, like, because he's like jealous of them somehow, he just says, you don't know how great the mercy of our king is, and so
so Maeglin's making
they swear him an oath as well. It's like they make him the courtesy, swearing to Maeglin as well that they will not reveal the place. And once they get back to their own people, they sort of ask where they've been and what clothes they're wearing, because they're so like they have rich garments, and so it's like they say we can't say anything. We just found out. It's like
don't fucking worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. This is no inconsistency of the plot for you
just
guys
to be clear,
anyway.
This is Hurin and Huar, who are two captains of the men that stayed true to that help the elves and stayed true.
Turgon doesn't want these people to go to war because he feels that the city is not strong, and so the time is not right to reveal this location. But it says that the fate of Gondolin is inevitably approaching anyway. He actually thought that with the end of the siege, the end of the Noldor would begin, and hence he sends envoys over the sea trying to ask for mercy. So 7 years after the fourth battle, so Morgoth attacks again, but that's not counted because it's only because the time of the battle is only counted until spring when the attacks lessened, I guess. So he's 7 years after the fourth battle, he sends people again to Hithlum. They are at least the fortresses are defended by Fingon, and Hurin is there as well, and he's sort of now a full-grown man, and so he defeats the orcs and hunts them through Anfauglith. Fingon has great pains at keeping the Angmann's northern forces at bay, and he only chooses to battle on the plains of Hithlum. And when he's about to lose, Círdan comes with his ships. He arrives in the fort of Drengist and attacks the forces from the west, and the elves, they sort of win this battle, and so Hurin rules the people rules his people, and he lives in Dolomin with his wife Morwen, who is Baragon's daughter. And so the outlaw, I mean, at the end it says like the ruin of the outlaws of the Arthurian came about as well. The Baron would be the only one to survive it, so that's where the chapter ends.
So we finished the epic chapter. Now let's go back to the beginning and talk about it.
I just want to read the part with Fingolfin. Thus he came alone to Angband's gates, and he sounded his horn, and smote once more upon the brazen doors, and challenged Morgoth to come forth to single combat. And Morgoth came. And then he goes on to the next chapter to explain how Morgoth didn't really want to come, but he had to come because all his guys
were calling him out in front of his guys.
All his people. But I like how he made it sound so epic. And then he went in to make Morgoth sound like a big pussy that had to come out anyway.
Well, it does say that alone of the Valar he knew fear, because he knows that he can't be killed, but he can do some damage, and losing face in front of his soldiers is almost that could be the end of his rule.
Yeah, he's basically the mightiest guy who ever lived, but the only thing is that he has fear, which is why he probably fled from Tulkas, because I think he could take Tulkas. He's not
a good wrestler. So he doesn't play by the same.
That's not the way he works.
Right, and also his hammer is named Grond, and Grond is the name that Sauron gives to the battering ram that they used to knock down Minas Tirith in the Lord of the Rings.
If we can insert that clip somewhere.
So just something about Huron and Huor to tie it into Lord of the Rings. They are the predecessors of both Aragon, Elrond, Arwen. So that family tree does loop back around.
And yes, those are elves we just named, and it will be explained later.
No, those are humans, right?
Well, Elrond.
Hurin and Huor, yes, they are men, but it's complicated.
I think it's crazy that when Morgoth decides to attack, he just spews fire and I'm assuming lava
Yeah.
out his mountain and just
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a couple. Yes.
he's
Sure.
like, yeah, you can't live here now, bitches, and then he just attacks with everything he has and backs the elves up.
It sounds like the doom of Valeria from Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, the land definitely was changed, but it just became I mean, you could still. I guess his forces could walk on the lava right afterwards, or maybe I don't know, because it was like a tactic to clear them, and then he actually attacked them.
And then he sort of, at first, it says that he wanted just to kill the elves, but now he's not content with that, so he wants to destroy their lands too. It's just sort of saying like, yeah, at first I just wanted to kill you, but now I'm gonna mess up your land. So it's
Take your home from you.
Yeah.
It's very mobby of them. I'm gonna kill your family. I'm gonna burn down your house. I'm gonna kill the horse in your backyard.
Oh man, yeah, he's such a bully.
It sounded like he was about 20 or 30 feet tall in the way they described the fight.
Yeah, he's sort of like a giant tower.
Which is hard. It's hard to figure out how Fingolfin actually got 7 hits in on him that weren't just on his legs.
So what I was saying is that basically, yeah, he sort of gets 7 hits in, but yeah, at the same time, he's sort of lucky because he manages to just hop around a lot, and at some point he just stumbles, and that's how he loses.
Yeah, but he couldn't have won anyway. He knew that it was lost, and this is really my favorite, individual scene of the whole book. It's like I can picture him just like throwing his shield down, taking off his helmet, saying, "Fuck it, this is the end. My people are dying. I'm gonna go do this one last thing." But it's ironic, or it's sad that it actually wasn't the case. He thought that everybody was dead, but some of them had survived, and it's very bittersweet ending. But it's also the most badass scenes of pretty much the whole Silmarillion, for me at least.
There are basically 2 drawings of it. One is by John Howe, and the other one, I think this is the one where he sort of looks like, where he sort of all clad in armor, and he's trying to hit Fingolfin. I think this is a really good. I mean, I always think of that image when I read this chapter, because it's like, yeah, it encompasses everything, right? Because that's what they're trying to do anyway. They're trying to defeat Melkor, and so it's just personalized in this 1-to-1 combat.
Yeah, isn't he described as like a shining star beneath like a black cloud or something when they're fighting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he stood before the king like a tower, iron-crowned, and his vast shield, sable unblazoned, cast a shadow over him like a storm cloud. But Fingolfin gleamed beneath it as a star. So yeah, he's definitely, it's darkness versus the light is hit home several times.
And he has like, I found that really interesting. I found that really, really strange. Like he has Fingolfin has diamonds on his shield. Like what are they good for? Mm-hmm. It's like
cutting glass,
just to shine, and because they're like shiny things.
Hey, Rhaegar had rubies on his shield. They kind of ended in the same way, but
didn't help him.
Yeah, smashed into the ground.
So the elves are not in a good place at the end of this chapter. The men are basically scattered into the wind also, and we're going to be heading into the tale of Beren and Luthien in our next discussion.
Oh, but it gets worse, don't worry.
Oh, it gets much worse before it gets better, and it never really gets better.
No.
Oh, let's talk about Sauron for a second. Like, he just sort of like makes this. He just sort of stops by. He comes in, and then we never hear of him again for 1 chapter or something. It's like he's sort of like he's the guy who sort of makes a fool of himself, or maybe he draws all the attention. And then at some point, we just go, "Oh yeah, you're just doing the same thing over and over again." So we're not going to look at you.
Well, he shows up in the Beren and Luthien chapter.
Yeah, and so what do you think of the werewolves? What do you think werewolves are like in this story? Because I know that at least they sort of are meant to be more like spirits. They're not like really
Yeah, they're
men
not men
who turn into
because-
wolves. So.
Well, they can't be because he doesn't have men.
No. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. So that's why they're calling them werewolves, but it seems like they're just wolves, like animated by evil
Yeah, like
spirits.
the wargs or something. Like wargs, not wargs from Ice and Fire, but like they're called wargs in the Lord of the Rings, right?
Big wolves.
Like giant evil wolves, basically.
Giant talking evil wolves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? There's one more thing I wanted to bring up. That Glamdring was Turgon's sword, and that Oakrist was made in Gondolin as well. That was the one that Thorin Oakenshield uses.
Which I think they mentioned that in The Hobbit, where once they get to Rivendell, and Elrond says these are the swords made of Gondolin, and
and then the big orc basically has a fit about it. when they have to take the weapons, and then that's why he says, "Well, we want to throw you in a hole now because you own these swords."
Right. It was like Biter and Foehammer or Orc Hammer or something like that.
Orc Hewer, I think. One of them was a Hewer, one was a Hammer.
It's strange to me that they know their names. I always wonder if orcs are immortal. I know we've talked about it, but I don't think anybody ever has an answer.
I imagine not, because they talk about how fast they breed.
Because there's something about Shagrat I think Shagrat says it to someone else. But, Gorbag, I think. He sort of talks about the siege, or something like that, which last siege was hundreds of years ago anyway. It's like, you're
created. They're created from elves, so they, I don't think they're immortal, but they don't ever get the chance to die peacefully, do they? They're always killed in battle
each other
or fallen into pits. So.
Am I the only one who thinks that Turgon is actually really selfish when he makes Gondolin in a secret place and doesn't invite everyone in? And sort of like.
It doesn't make sense from the point of view that he knows that he needs to do it because it was shown to him in the dream. But one of my favorite paintings is when Tuor makes it to Vinyamar, and it's this just beautiful ruined city. It's like you built a city, and then 100 years later you just left it for this other secret place. But it's because the whole doom is coming that you've got to be ready for it. So I understand it, but
which is the Valar doing exactly what the Valar do. Just pull back. Just don't even worry about it. It'll go away. The problem always goes away.
And comes back.
It's a cool place. Gondolin is the city. It's the place everybody wants to go at, but no one can get there.
So Gondolin or Nargothrond, where would you rather live?
I'm kind of claustrophobic, so I would more like Gondolin than Nargothrond, which I'm sure is pretty. It's just it's underground.
I thought you were a Meningroth guy.
Yeah,
not Meningroth, but
Meningroth. It's got a lot of trees, and it's more of a foresty type thing, even though it's a cave too. But I'll take Gondolin if it's.
It's like everywhere you go, it's like, all right, you're stuck here. You got to stay.
But I think how does Gondolin manage to stay hidden from the eyes of birds and all that stuff?
It's like we can't go there.
Evil birds.
The eagles protect it. The eagles protect it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
makes sense.
We'll talk about that more in the Fall of Gondolin.
I liked hearing Gilgalad's name. Gilgalad.
Gilgalad. Yeah.
Get a couple name drops, and he shows up in the.
And does nothing basically until.
He's got a cool spear, and he's got a name, and he's in the prologue of Lord of the Rings. So I love him for that.
We got is it Celeborn? He shows up.
Yep.
Celeborn and Galadriel show up.
And Círdan as well. He shows up a lot, actually.
Círdan's always on the periphery, coming in and doing his thing, but he's always there, and he's there all the way to the end.
Most of the time shaking his head like, you people. I don't get you.
I just want to sit and let my beard grow in peace, but you won't let me.
He just stands there and strokes his beard.
He's probably got a mustache at this point, or maybe a goatee. All right, well, thank you for joining us for our fourth installment. As we said, next time we'll be tackling Baron and Luthien in its lovely complexity. But until then, thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
You too, yeah. Bye.
Fingon doesn't hear somebody typing. Somebody stop typing. Or if you're typing, mute yourself, please. Who's still typing?
Yep.
Sorry.
If you're typing, mute yourself because you hear it on the mics. You get -1 demerit.
Can't silence it. I don't know.
Just type softer. It's alright. Fingon Fingon
Fingon, yeah.
doesn't.
Fingon.
This is why when Martin says that Gimli could take the mountain, it's probably because he's small and he can sort of hit him like in the legs, where basically he has to reach down to get him. That's what it is. And so while he's doing that, he's not fighting. So it's probably that he's exposing himself to all these vulnerabilities. And that's why I guess when Martin said, Gimli could basically defeat the mountain, people were saying like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
If it
But
goes,
it's like, yeah, because you're small and you're probably faster than he.
No, because Legolas is gonna shoot him in the eye with an arrow before he ever hits Gimli.
well, no, Gimli has that awesome kill in the movies where he slides under the legs of the Uruk-hai berserker and
Oh yeah, it's in
and
the
gets
groin.
him, kicks him in the dick with his axe. So he'd probably do the same thing to the mountain. Fingon. I'm sorry. Fingon
Fingon, yeah.
doesn't.
Fingon.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I'll ever have this opportunity again, but I don't know if you ever saw this Family Guy episode where there's a flashback and Chris is talking to a geek and he says, "Well, if there's the Eagles, why couldn't the Eagles just have flown them there and dropped the ring in the fire?" And the guy doesn't have anything to say. Like, what's your response to that?
Like I just say they don't want to. They just
Okay.
don't want to carry them all that way. They just feel like you're real heavy. We don't want to. We're not your pack mules. So just go on your own.
But they are. They're always called in to carry people around and to get the dirty work done. And
Yeah.
whatever. This is after show, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Blah blah blah. All right.
It would have made for a pretty poor story if they had just.
Oh, absolutely. But that always bothered me. Like I didn't have a response to. I was watching that in college, and they're like, "Yeah, what about that, Greg?" I was like,
The only responses that I can give is that the Eagles, they don't want anything to do with it. They don't like the evil of the ring. They don't like carrying it, and probably they would be corrupted by it if they had to carry it anyway.
Well,
So it's like this is an all-powerful ring that sort of corrupts everyone. It doesn't. There's no exceptions. Like even if you have the Eagles, if you give it to them, they at some point they will just go like, oh yeah, I'm here in Mordor.
Turn into
let's
like
keep it for
Gollum, and they will
myself.
bring me all the sheep.
Yeah. I'll have the prettiest nest of all.
I think the skies were supposed to be patrolled by the whatever the ring race were riding too.
fell beasts.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we know
Yeah,
they-
and I always thought that too, but like I didn't have like a 1 cent like. Well, obviously this.
we know they're good for the fell
Well,
beasts
no.
are good for shit against the Eagles. The Eagles make small work out of them fell beasts anyway. At least in the film they do.
I think the answer actually comes from the Council of Elrond and what Gandalf says later. It's like, this is your age, you got to like deal with shit yourself because we're leaving.
Mhm.
So like, whereas the Eagles aren't like, I don't know. I feel like
Yes.
it was really up to the men and elves and dwarves of Middle Earth's problem, not the Eagles.
And this is
They're
like really
just more watchers.
This is like really a difference in generation as well, I guess, at least from the writer's perspective, because today, like, people don't want to do anything unless they have something to get from it. It's like they don't want to deal with this. Just rather give it to someone else. Like, I don't want to do it. It's like a sloth taking over. Oh, this again.
All right, so I'll have
and-
some witty responses for next time then. But,
Yeah,
Because it wasn't written that way, Dick.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Fingon
Fingon, yeah.
doesn't.
Fingon.
Beleriand. I don't think I said that
That's
right.
right.
Madros, oldest son of Fëanor. Is that how y'all pronounce that? Madros?
Yeah.
Madros?
It's Mithros.
That's right. DH is a
Maestros.
TH. Maedros.
Mithros. And when he could not find Mithros,
You
Yeah.
must explain that Shane has finally hit puberty and now his voice is starting to crack.
hold on, I gotta
Keep
cough.
going, man. You're killing it.
But I got Fingolfin and Madros. Is it Thingol?
No, there's Fingolfin and Maedros, right?
Mithros. Okay.
There you go. You got it.
Maedros.